everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another review here of The Walking Dead Dead City. This is episode 2, so obviously this will contain spoilers for the episode, so I hope you are aware of that. I will just say, really incredible episode. I actually prefer this one over the very first episode, and I just have to point out, how nice is it that there's 6 more episodes left of the season? Like, literally with the other shows or the last couple of spinoffs anyways, it's been like just 6 episodes for the season. So that would mean that we're already like, what, almost a third done the season. So like next Sunday would be the halfway mark. Like that's just like way too short. So it makes a lot of sense to why, you know, there's been a lot of criticism for The Walking Dead because they are really rushing stories. Like it's kind of insane. I honestly think that 8 episodes is still not enough. I mean, it's better, but I still think like minimum 10 episodes or even do like 12. I don't know. A lot of people want 16. I think that would be really incredible, but I just think in terms of if you didn't want to do that, then like, I don't know, like definitely not 6 episodes. That is not enough episodes at all. Anyways, before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this, but let's just talk about episode 2 here. So in this episode, we actually see New Babylon traveling to New York, and it is the next day, I believe. It could be a couple of days later, but it's basically the next day, and yeah, they are traveling to, I guess, cross the river and go to New York City, and so that is their overall plan, and yeah, we see a lot of things basically building up to this moment with Maggie, you know, telling them that, like, they know that we're on our way and we have to be, you know, just a little bit, I guess, more cautious about this. We need to be a little bit more prepared. I think the plan that we have is just not the greatest plan. And Pearly, you know, I think believes Maggie. Like, I think he's at the point now where he's like, yeah, I do trust her because she knows what she's talking about. And Major Lucia and Charlie Bird obviously don't really necessarily know a lot of what they're talking about. Like, I think it's one of those things where, you know, like obviously they run things at New Babylon, but that's not what it's like in the real world. Like, yes, maybe dealing with just like random people here and there, it's a little bit easier, but when you're actually dealing with another group that is like more your equal, right? Like, I'm not saying the Croat and Dama are necessarily, you know, like equal in terms of power and all that to New Babylon, but they're more powerful than just dealing with like random communities or this and that, right? And so Maggie has dealt with that a lot. We've seen her deal with a lot of other communities, and so she knows that some of these groups are going to think differently overall, and so she's trying to convince them all of that, but obviously they don't necessarily believe her. I will just say as well, the very beginning scene with Negan, and I guess his name was Victor, right? The guy who plays the violin. I knew that something bad was going to happen because of that beginning scene. I didn't know if it was going to happen in that scene or what, but just because the episode started off like that, I was like, okay, something is going to happen in this episode. And it was just the way the episode was structured, the way the scene played out. I was like, all right, something is happening at some point in this episode here. And yeah, we'll talk about that soon. But it's really interesting to see Negan go back to the cell that I guess he's been in over the last like year or so, right? Like, I think he's able to leave, right? But he just, I guess that's where he feels the most comfortable, so he goes back there. But yeah, I think that it's kind of interesting because I would say with Negan, like, he is obviously, I would say, a good person overall, right? Like, obviously, he is who he is, and there's all of that, but I think that that stuff is awesome as well. Like, he seemed to really enjoy when the Croat was, like, shooting the walkers out or whatever at the boat and stuff, right? Like, just the whole thing happening. Like, he kind of smiled like, wow, this is really cool, right? Like, you see that side to him, so he's not always, like, very serious all the time, right? So, when you see those moments there, it's very cool. It's just very, like, oh, wow, there's the character that everyone talks about, right? But then we see Maggie, and yeah, it's a scene that we saw the other day, actually, where she actually sees the signal. It's like a smoke signal, and I'm still kind of confused as to who made the signal. I'm like, was it Hershel? And then Maggie was like covering up for Hershel. I don't think it was, because Hershel asked like, oh, like, what's all this? And Maggie's like, oh, I think it's a signal or whatever. So I guess it was the Croat who did do that. And obviously they were all very prepared. And you know, I was thinking about it afterwards in terms of like all of this stuff. Like, you know, would it make sense for the Croat to be like this prepared about everything and have everything in the water, like all of those? I mean, it was basically just a minefield out there, right? So like the Croat was very, very like prepared for a lot of this. And I like what Maggie says in this episode, that somebody like the Croat would be very prepared for something like this because he's a very paranoid person. And when you look back to season 1, there was a lot of setup for this because he did learn of New Babylon. He learned of, you know, this other community, and that there were, you know, others that were actually coming here. And so he knew that they were likely going to be coming after him. And so he had to be more prepared for this, right? And so it makes a lot of sense. Like, especially when you look at season 1, there was a lot of setup for this. I just kind of forgot about some of that because, I mean, it's been a while since season 1 came out, right? So there's a really cool story that's actually told here in this episode where, you do learn a little bit more about their backstory overall. And I think that stuff like that is really interesting, I think, for the show to actually introduce, because, like the Croat was around during the Savior's time, but he was around before Dwight showed up, and like just certain things around there, right? Like he was just there in season 1, and then Negan and Simon got rid of him. So like we know that whole story, right? But I think just to give us a little bit more backstory there, like that one time when they were at the sanctuary and there was a group, like it was one of the first groups that came after them, and Negan, instead of like, maybe getting rid of them or just whatever, was like, you know what, let's have a feast. And so they had a feast. And there was a lot of food, and, everyone was like, whoa, this is actually pretty incredible. But he actually switched it out, and it was walker meat. And obviously they had the real food, but that group, they were eating walker meat, right? Or tainted meat, basically, right? Sort of a reference to season 4 when that happened with Bob. And so really crazy scene. Like, I think something like that would be absolutely so awesome to see right now in the show. But that just really tells you what, the world was like back then. And I still think people would do things like that now, but it's just really cool to think about when you're looking back, to how things were back then. Like, he actually did something like that. And so when you're looking back to season 4, with that scene with Gareth and everyone from Terminus, like it's really interesting because technically what Negan did was so much worse than that, right? But yeah, just a very cool story. Maggie and Hershel are locked up in a boat because of, I guess, the whole encounter that Maggie had with Major Lucia, which I will say, I think that character is actually very likable for a villain, because a lot of the stuff she was saying was honestly, like, it was getting me kind of mad, because like it's the way that she just follows exactly what New Babylon wants to do. And I mean, it makes sense for New Babylon. Like, that's just what they do. Like, that's their whole thing, right? That's why she's in the place that she's in, is because she followed all of New Babylon's orders. And it's one of those things where I think we'll see where the story goes this season, but I don't see that character becoming like a good character at some point. I think that she's going to be pretty much like this for the rest of the season, and I could see the character dying at some point, because it seems like she took over Charlie Bird's role as like, the leader of New Babylon, though I imagine that they do have a lot of other leaders and there's a whole other process there. Obviously the character did die here in this episode, so I think for what the story is going to be right now, she is kind of taking that role, but we'll see where things go. I think she was a bit shocked as to, what happened there in episode 2. So we'll see where things go in the next couple of episodes here, but I don't see her being like, you know what, Maggie, you were right, this and that, because I kind of see Pearlie being the character that has that story this season. And so I could see Major Lucia actually being the one that's like, no, you know what, like, I've been letting you do this and that for too long. We have to go back to what we were doing before, this and that. So I could see that happening more this season. And then the moment happens that we've been sort of, I guess, seeing in the trailer and all that. Like, they actually cross the river to go to New York City, and Negan and the Croat are waiting there. And I will just say the Croat is insane. Like, just everything that he's doing. Like, he's talking about, all of the, I guess, landmines basically that he put there, in the water. And, obviously they're getting like hit by everything. They put an anchor down so that they don't, hit anymore. And then he starts like firing walkers at them basically. And just the whole thing going on, like, I could tell, from Negan's perspective, he's probably just like, wow, like, the Croat is absolutely insane. And that is one of the things, when you go back to season 1 of Dead City, that we learned about him, right? Is that he was just a bit too much for the Sanctuary, and he would do things that were just a little bit too much for him. And so that's why, they had to get rid of him, because it was one of those things where it got too much for Negan. And it's kind of cool to see, like all these years later, like he's recognizing that, but obviously firing walkers at them and just all the explosions and stuff like that. Like Negan, he's just like, this is cool, right? So he's kind of smiling because like he loves it. We do see Maggie and Hershel trying to escape, and Hershel realizes that, he messed up quite a bit. And it's one of those moments, I think, for the character that like he's never really been in a place like this. So he's kind of realizing some of the mistakes he's made and this and that. And of course, Maggie is just getting very frustrated, just like, because obviously, like, she recognizes what he's going through, but like, they're in a situation where like they got to get out of here. So I think for Hershel, I mean, we've seen it a lot with characters on The Walking Dead. This goes back to season 1. a character will realize I messed up or I did this or whatever, and they're just so out of it. Then you have to have someone sort of be like, it's all right, whatever. Like, let's just kind of wake them up a little bit, right? So yeah, we saw Hershel go through that. And then we get, Charlie Bird's death, or I guess Governor Bird is who she actually is, because she is the governor of New Babylon. And, she was gone just like that, like absolutely insane. And to see them loading up walkers, like, again, the Croat, I think, is just, I wasn't expecting that. I was wondering what they were doing, but he really is very, like, I guess, practical with everything, right? Like, in terms of using methane and walkers, like, he's very, very intelligent. I mean, he's a scientist, right? Like, this episode, and like now looking back at season 1, is really telling me how important the character is. Like, we don't have characters like that. Like, we've never really had a character like the Croat ever. So I think for him to die this season, honestly, like, I don't know if I want that, because he does some crazy things and he's really, really smart. So I just think having him around for a little bit more, we'll see where the season goes with all the other characters, but he's a really awesome character. But then we get the big moment of the episode, and Negan sees Hershel. And I actually expected this to happen, and I was wondering, like, what Negan would do in a situation like that if he saw Maggie and everyone there, right? And he does pause to make sure that they're all right, and the Croat immediately notices that, and so obviously tells Dama, right? And I think that right there shows his loyalty to Dama, because I think before this, sometimes you can kind of question that a little bit. Like, obviously, I know he's very loyal to Dama, but I also sometimes feel like, he is like a person, so maybe he understands why Negan would do something like that, but no, he's just loyal to her and that's it. And so, yeah, obviously he's going to tell her, right? And so we get to the very final scene, which actually, first of all, I do want to mention, they found Benjamin. And so I don't know where they're going with his story for episode 3 and 4 and etc., but he's not in a good place at all. And they're going to learn a lot of information from him. So I think that, very, very smart for them to actually have him right now. And Dama actually calls out Negan for letting someone live, or I guess she's trying to figure out exactly who did he let go there, right? And so that's where, he's not getting into everything. And then Victor shows up, and I guess that's where we learned his name, that his name was Victor. And right away, I knew he was going to die. And it's funny because we're all talking about that scene where Negan like freaks out, like, why is he freaking out? Is it because Ginny is there, Hershel, or Maggie, right? Or in the last week, there's been some talk about like, well, what about Annie or Joshua, right? Like, maybe he's freaking out about that, but no, it makes sense. Again, I talked about that in the beginning of the episode. Like, I knew something bad was going to happen to the character because he was given just a little bit too much screen time, and that's always been a thing with Walking Dead characters. When there's like a nothing character shows up and all of a sudden they have so much screen time, and then they explain their backstory and they get into something that you can sympathize with, you're just like, okay, something really bad is going to happen with this character. And I just knew immediately that he was going to die here in this scene. And so very cool scene here, I think, to show everyone what Dama is capable of. Though I will say, I think the death scene in general wasn't like absolutely too insane. I think it was all right. I thought something crazier was going to happen, but I still think like playing the music and the whole scene that was happening around it was probably the more entertaining part. And I like what Jeffrey Dean Morgan says, because when you go back to season 7, or I guess 6, I guess 7 and 8, like, and even previous villains, like, you understood where they came from for the most part. Like, you sort of know that the world made them, who they are. And right now with Dama and, like the Croat, I think that it's really hard to see who they were, because I think that they were always this person. So that's what makes them a little bit more, creepy as villains, I would say, because the scene was just, I would say, creepy in general. It wasn't necessarily anything that was too I think that that's the best way to describe it, is I think that those two characters are just a little creepy, I would say. And so, we'll have to wait and see where things go here for the character. But yeah, Negan is just not in the best place right now because he kind of lied to them. And so now they're going to be questioning him a lot on who was it, this and that. And so, I'm expecting that Dama knows that it was probably Hershel or maybe Ginny, if she knows of her, right? Like, I'm not sure if she actually knows of her, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see where this goes here. But I'm excited for episode 3. And then we get the very last scene here, which I thought was actually, I don't know if this is what happened here. And if you guys know, definitely let me know. But it seemed like because Maggie was just sitting there, and then she noticed Hershel was helping somebody and someone had a wound on their leg or whatever. And so Hershel was wrapping up the wound and everything. I thought that in that moment, like Maggie saw that and it just reminded her of her father because obviously Hershel got bit on his leg. They had to take his leg off. And so I think just seeing Hershel doing something like that, because remember Hershel, like older Hershel from season 2, 3, and 4, like he was a doctor, right? Or he was a veterinarian or something like that. So he did stuff like that all the time. And so to actually see her son Hershel doing that and then seeing that, you know, someone had a wound on their leg and all of that, like that must have just reminded her of her father. And I really feel like in that moment, with everything that she was feeling, she just started to feel the loss of her father specifically. I don't even think she was really thinking about Glenn necessarily. I think it was just like her father in that moment. Like I could be reading that wrong entirely, but that's what I thought. Because at first I was like, oh, maybe she noticed a walker bite. And so she's sad that this person's gonna die, right? But no, I think it was more that it brought her back to how things were back then and, you know, just how much she's been through and that things are just still like this. And seeing that Hershel, her son, is just in a place like this is just what life is like. And so it made her very, very upset because she misses her father. And then she also is probably, you know, happy to see her son, you know, doing things like that because that's just sort of what her father did. And I think it made her really emotional. That's how I read the scene there. I'm not sure if that's what that was. Overall, I thought this episode was definitely better than the first episode. I really liked the first episode. I'm not saying anything bad about the first episode. I just really liked the action here in this episode. And this really does feel like Walking Dead right now. You know, like we have 6 more episodes left. That is so incredible. Like, I like when the story is a little bit slower like this. Like, you want the story to be a little bit slower to sort of, you know, I guess, spend more time with characters in certain moments and seeing them, you know, on like very simple missions. And when you look at the episode overall, it's like, what happened? Well, New Babylon and Maggie went to New York City. That's all that happened. And so we literally just saw like that trip. And then for Negan and the Croat, it was basically stopping them. But then you get a lot of character development stuff, right? And that's what The Walking Dead was always about. Like, I know if you look back at the older seasons, you might think, oh, it was so incredible or whatever. But like, honestly, if you look back at most of those episodes, it was a lot like this. They were just very slow. Like, that's how you build moments and you build up characters, and then crazy moments would happen in like the finale or just like random episodes here and there, right? And then you're just like, whoa, what? So I really enjoyed this episode, and I'm excited for episode 3. I really can't wait to see, I guess, what the show is going to bring here. And so far, the whole 8-episode thing is incredible. Honestly, really amazing. And I think that I really hope that The Walking Dead going forward does do 8 episodes because like the show needs it. There needs to be minimum 8 episodes, and any less would definitely be very, very unfortunate. So anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.